Good evening, welcome to Republic TV. I'm Ridhiman Bhardwaj. Viewers, as promised, we are going to have a special broadcast only for COVID patients. Today, our broadcast is going to be highlighting specially dedicated focus on diabetes, hypertension and COVID. Your questions are going to be answered by top experts. Let me quickly go across and introduce on the panel today Padma Shri Dr. Arvinder Singh Soin, who's joining us, Chairman of the Institute of Liver Transplantation and Regenerative Medicine from Medanta in the capital. We're also joined by Dr. Aparna Jaswal, Director of Cardiology, Fortis Heart Institute, who's also joining us from the capital. As I welcome our doctors today and I salute the kind of efforts they are putting into this, I ask first Dr. Soin, who's been introduced now. Dr. Soin, I go straight to questions that viewers are sending in, and we've just collated them together. Viewers who are asking for different things about hypertension and diabetes. So Dr. Soin, good evening. The first question, sir, I ask you, what preventive routine can be adopted for patients with hypertension? It's a question that callers have sent in. And also suffering from COVID with hypertension and diabetes, when should they be going to the hospital?
The obvious thing for patients with known hypertension and or diabetes to do is to control their diabetes well. So if the diabetes is well controlled, then the risk to them of any kind of infection, including COVID, is minimized. And good control, everybody understands a fasting level should be around between 90 and 120, and the postprandial should be less than 150, and the HbA1c should be in the region of 6.2 or less. So that's good control. All diabetics understand that. Similarly, hypertensive should also control their blood pressure within the normal acceptable range. So that's the aim for these patients if they want to be safe from the complications of diabetes and hypertension, and also from acquiring COVID. Now, people who have long-standing diabetes or hypertension, and long-standing means, more than 10 years or even more than 5 years, and they have uncontrolled diabetes or hypertension, then their threshold for going for admission to hospital should be lower. So we tell everyone that if you have COVID and if your saturation is 94 or more, and if you have had less than 1 week of illness with fever or with whatever other symptoms, but if you don't have chest pain, if you don't have high fever more than a week, if you don't have breathlessness, and if your saturations are more than 94, then you don't need to go to hospital. But if you're a long-standing, uncontrolled diabetic or hypertensive or both, and you have slightly lesser symptoms, then you should definitely be in touch with your physician, because if you've had long-standing disease, then you would be having a physician a phone call away. You should get in touch with them and make sure what they feel about your hospitalization.
Yes. And that's very crucial, because you also said if there's a spike, one needs to take care. I come to my second question that callers have written to us. Dr. Jaswal, I'd like you to take this on. A lot of people are asking, are symptoms escalation more acute, common when it comes to COVID patients with hypertension or diabetes, and how to keep blood sugar in control while being COVID positive? What to do for them if there is a spike? Dr. Jaswal, if you can hear me, several callers who've been calling in have asked this particular question. Are symptoms and escalation more acute and common for COVID patients with hypertension and for diabetes? Also, how do they keep the blood sugar in control while being COVID positive? What should they be doing if there's a sudden spike?
Yeah, so I think it goes without saying that people who have baseline comorbidities need to exercise more caution when they have COVID-19. We've already realized that the implications of this disease process are much more severe in patients who are elderly and have comorbidities. Hypertension and diabetes are two diseases which are extremely common in the community, and these are two diseases which already have a baseline inflammation ongoing. So our patients who develop COVID-19 and have a baseline comorbidity need to seek medical attention more quickly. Having said that, we must understand that there should be no panic stricken when they get COVID-19. It's important to connect with your doctor, get your tests done, and follow the routine investigations and the treatment as advised by your general physician or your doctor. There should be no panic, but yes, when you have a baseline comorbidity, seek medical attention and follow the advice of your doctor.
Yes, Dr. Jaswal, very validly said. Dr. Soin, I ask you, another caller has asked a very valid question. As a COVID patient, does one have to suspend the regular hypertension, diabetes medicines? Because the question on everyone's mind is how to keep blood pressure in check while being COVID positive. And like I said, what should they be doing if they believe there's a spike?
No, absolutely not. No medication for diabetes, hypertension, or any other chronic disease should be held or withheld during COVID. Your regular medication you must have, and that's a must. You do not leave any medication that you're regularly on. That's for sure. And in case of a spike, I can't really give you this advice on television here. They need to call their regular physician because they understand their system. And if there is a spike in sugar or blood pressure for such a patient, they need to connect with their physician immediately for advice. And they'll obviously be asked to increase the level of either the anti-diabetic medicine they are taking, whether it's insulin or oral hypoglycemic or antihypertensive that they are taking. They will be asked to increase it. But there is no single formula for all these patients. They need to get in touch with their physician immediately.
Yes, that's true then. Then for callers who are asking this question, it's very important to be in touch with doctors immediately and not to be off any medicines if they do feel that they have got COVID positive. I also want to ask Dr. Jaswal now. Dr. Jaswal, when should one consider steroids? A question being asked is, what is the fallout if a patient has diabetes and COVID positive? What is something that they should be more precautious about? What should they watch out for?
So I think this is a very good question that you bring out, and viewers must understand that COVID-19 has basically three ways of representing and progressing. It's either a mild, a moderate, or a severe disease. One must leave this to the judgment of his doctor to understand when should I begin steroids, when should I begin blood thinners. One should not be on a public platform addressing this problem. Having said that, I think it's important to understand today most of us have an oximeter. That's the most simplistic measurement of your disease process. If you have ongoing fever beyond 3 days, if you see that the saturation, the oximeter, the saturation, the SpO2 that we say, is beginning to fall below 94%, it's a good understanding that connect with your doctor immediately. Please do not try to self-medicate yourself with COVID-19. You must understand if you take these drugs early in the onset of the disease, you can harm yourself. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is that there is paranoia, there is frenzy, and people are beginning to pop in pills. One should not do that. Remember, if you have ongoing fever, your blood tests have been done, and you see that the oxygen saturation on your SpO2, your oximeter, is beginning to dip in lesser than 94 or 93%. It is a time that you discuss with your doctor and understand that let your doctor decide that do you need steroids. Remember that patients who have diabetes, and if you take steroids, because these are steroids will cause an upswing in your blood sugar, and you may potentially harm yourself. So don't be on a rampage to stuff in drugs. Rather, be peaceful, no panic. Majority of us who have COVID will recover. Just maintain a good saturation, good hydration, take care of your fever pattern, be in constant touch with your doctor, and let your doctor decide when to begin steroids.
That's very sound advice. So it's also that the doctor that needs to do this. Also, I want to go across to the other guests who are joining us. Dr. Anil Bhoraskar, who's also joining us. He's the diabetologist from Asian Heart Institute, Rahija Hospital and Asian Cancer Hospital. As I welcome you on the show, sir, a lot of callers are messaging, calling up and asking lots of questions on diabetes and hypertension. One question that several people have asked is on breathlessness during and after being COVID positive. What should they be doing long term? And if they are having hypertension and are COVID positive, what should they be mindful of?
First principle that whenever you have COVID, your other comorbidity comes up more in terms of symptoms and its presentation. They also need equal attention. Now, for example, if a patient is admitted with COVID and CORAD score of more than 4, and he needs about 6 liters of oxygen, there is a good chance that his subjective feeling of breathlessness could be either due to the disease, maybe due to underlying bronchospastic disease, or maybe due to anxiety. So one has to really differentiate. So a good clinical examination, which will tell you if there are rhonchi, that's the sounds which come out from the lungs, which are due to bronchospasm, then you need use of steroids aggressively. You need a bronchodilators. Now, many times the bronchodilators can increase the pulse rate. Pulse rate is a very important clinical feature. And many times that can mislead you if there is a tachycardia more than 100, and that could be due to the underlying infection of COVID, or could also due to strain on your myocardium. So there is a bit of myocarditis in this disease that also needs attention, and therefore you may need volume restriction instead of hydration. So you have to take a lot of steps based on other clinical parameters, which a good smart physician will know how to differentiate from the symptoms and signs of COVID, and that due to underlying cardiac, renal, respiratory, neurological conditions. So it's a very, very delicate situation, and you need really people with experience to differentiate these symptoms and try to realize that all symptoms in a given patient with a comorbidity is not necessarily due to COVID. And what happens, a lot of attention is given to COVID. The other mistake I've seen that people have that pulse oximeter with themselves, and they keep on looking at that pulse oximeter. This happens in my hospital also. A very high profile patient is admitted along with his treating physician, both of them in one room. They keep on looking at their oxygen saturation. And the oxygen saturation, the moment it drops below 94, they tell the ward staff to increase the flow of oxygen. Instead of 2 liters, 3 liters, they say make it 8 liters. And in fact, one of the reasons why the oxygen is being wasted in many hospitals, because the patient wants his oxygen saturation 96, 97. That's not really required. Anything above 93 is desirable and acceptable. Over-oxygenation also should be avoided. So, you understand a competent physician who has seen a lot of cases other than COVID. Please remember that before COVID, we were treating cardiac failures. Before COVID, we were treating bronchospastic disease. Before COVID, we were taking a lot of neurological problems associated in an elderly person. So they also need equal importance and equal aggressive treatment. Now, for sake of the care of diabetes, which is my main forte, is aggressive treatment with use of insulin. See, there are 3 things. The infection itself, the COVID virus itself, it can cause pancreatitis, and the steroids, methylprednisolone that we give, all 3 contribute to increase the blood sugar. Now, the only weapon that we have to control elevated blood sugar is insulin. And proper use of insulin, not producing hypoglycemia, Giving small doses of soluble insulin or a long-acting insulin with a proper monitoring 4 or 5 times and keeping the blood sugar in the range of 130 to 180 all times, that is the job of a physician and a diabetologist. And that, if it's done well, we have seen the comorbidities come under control, the hospital stay is reduced, the patient morbidity also comes down, only if you aggressively manage your diabetes. Now, I'm not trying to say that we know the best.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that we know everything.
Correct.
Let me tell you that I'm a professor of medicine in this line for 40 years. And over the last 8 months, I have learned a lot.
Yes.
Believe me, every day I am learning new things about this disease.
In fact,
Our
Dr.
information about
Bharaskar,
this.
correct. In fact, Dr. Bharaskar, the way we are seeing this disease grow, I want to ask you, spoken about oxygen. I want to ask Dr. Soin this. Dr. Soin, just a short while ago, I've seen your tweet. We are talking several times over about saving oxygen, and save oxygen has been something that you have also spoken about, where you've written awake to proning, maintain saturation, use nasal prong. Sir, as several courts of the country speak about it, what according to you is the need of the hour? How to save oxygen? Which person needs oxygen maximum?
You know, it's very essential that both the supply and the demand side of oxygen, is taken care of, so that the oxygen shortage does not remain and it reaches the people who need it most. Can you not hear me? Can you not hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So I'm saying that it's very important that in this situation of the pandemic and the oxygen shortage, both the supply and the demand side are taken care of. So the Prime Minister has just reinforced the manufacturing side and the supply chain side a little while ago, and that's very heartening to hear. On the demand side, obviously, it's us doctors who have to take care. And I believe that there is too much panic among general public, especially when they test positive, and especially those people who are at home. So let me put it very clearly. 80 to 85% of the patients will never need oxygen if they test COVID positive. Majority of these people are at home, so they can actually manage just by simple measures like taking vitamins, taking healthy food, sleeping well, and taking advice from your physician online. And a small percentage of people at home may need oxygen. And if they need oxygen, then simple cylinders or oxygen concentrators, which give you oxygen from 5 to 10 liters, can be used. And if one gets breathless despite these measures at home, then you can use what's called prone breathing. Prone breathing is simply breathing when you're lying on your stomach. And I have tweeted about this. We've also posted a video. It's a very simple thing. You basically have to lie on your stomach and elevate the front part of your body on a pillow or a cushion and just breathe calmly. And that improves your oxygenation because it opens up more of the lung for air exchange compared to when you're in a supine position, which means you're on your back. So this is a very simple thing to do. It's usually done in hospitals, in ICUs for patients who are on ventilator or on other kind of ventilatory support, but it also works if you do it at home. The other thing is that it is not essential to actually get oxygenation of 97 and 98 every time. You just have to aim for oxygenation of 93, 94 while at home. And if you're in hospital, you just have to aim for an oxygenation of 90 to 92. That's enough. Under supervision in hospital situation, that's all you need to aim for. And that the senior doctors and the intensivists need to teach junior doctors and nurses so that minimum wastage of oxygen happens. And the other thing I've recommended is that you use nasal prongs. When you're using non-invasive ventilation, the doctors will understand this, and this is in a hospital situation, rather than connecting the oxygen tube directly to the NIV device. And, there is at least 25% wastage of oxygen by leakage from pipelines or tubes. And this should be detected and prevented and mended so that this wastage does not happen.
Yes. Dr. Soin, that's extremely crucial, very important, as the entire country is trying to battle the crisis and also trying to understand why the shortage of oxygen. These important few things that have been highlighted by Dr. Soin, Dr. Bharaskar, as well as Dr. Jaswal will go a long way forward. Also, callers who called in with their diabetes and hypertension questions, I hope they are answered. It's always important to be with the doctors. I thank our doctors, our frontline warriors, for taking out time to be with us on this broadcast. Thank you for joining us.